The engine stopped. The soldier turned the ignition again, nothing. Around him, there was only silence and snow. Endless, suffocating snow. His breath froze in the air as panic slowly replaced discipline. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. They weren't being defeated by bullets or tanks or even the enemy. They were being defeated by something far more invisible, a mistake. A decision made months earlier, now unfolding in the most brutal way possible. In 1941, Nazi Germany stood at the peak of its power. In less than 2 years, its armies had conquered most of Europe with terrifying speed and efficiency. Poland had fallen. France had collapsed in weeks. Even Britain, though still resisting, stood isolated. To many, the German war machine seemed unstoppable. But it was precisely at this moment, at the height of confidence, that Adolf Hitler made the most dangerous decision of the war, to invade the Soviet Union. Germany's success had been built on blitzkrieg, lightning war, fast, coordinated, devastating, tanks, infantry, and air power moving as one unstoppable force. Entire armies were encircled and destroyed before they could react. Victory came quickly, almost too easily. And with every success, a dangerous belief began to grow among German leadership, that their strategy was flawless and that no enemy could withstand it. But there was a hidden flaw beneath this confidence. Germany had mastered short wars, rapid offensives, quick collapses. But what they were about to face was something entirely different. A war not measured in weeks, but in distance, endurance, and time. And time would become their greatest enemy. Operation Barbarossa began in June 1941. It was the largest military invasion in human history. Over 3 million German soldiers crossed into Soviet territory, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft. The scale was unimaginable. The objective was simple: destroy the Soviet Union before winter. A bold plan, but one built on dangerous assumptions. Hitler believed the Soviet Union was weak, poorly led, poorly equipped, and on the verge of collapse. Early victories seemed to confirm this belief. Soviet forces were overwhelmed. Hundreds of thousands were captured. Entire regions fell in days. But what the Germans failed to understand was that the Soviet Union was not collapsing. It was absorbing the Oder and preparing to respond. Then came the turning point, a mistake that would change everything. Instead of focusing all forces on Moscow, the symbolic and logistical heart of the Soviet Union, Hitler divided his army. Troops were redirected south toward Ukraine and north toward Leningrad. The advance slowed, momentum faded, and with every passing day, the window for victory began to close. What had once been a fast-moving offensive but turned into a stretched, fragmented operation. Supply lines grew longer and more vulnerable. Fuel, ammunition, and food struggled to reach the front lines. The German army was still advancing, but it was no longer unstoppable. And in the distance, winter was coming. On the ground, the war felt very different from the maps. Soldiers marched for days without rest. Their boots wore thin. Their supplies dwindled. And then came the mud, the infamous Rasputitsa. Roads disappeared into thick, endless sludge. Vehicles became useless. Tanks sank. Trucks stalled. Entire columns froze in place. The war simply stopped moving. For the soldiers, this was the beginning of a nightmare. Exhaustion, hunger, and uncertainty took hold. Letters from home stopped arriving. The enemy was no longer just ahead, it was everywhere. Hidden, waiting. And slowly, the realization began to spread. This war was not going to end quickly. Then the temperature dropped. Not gradually, but violently. Minus 30 degrees Celsius. Engines froze overnight, weapons jammed, oil turned to ice. German uniforms, designed for European campaigns, offered little protection. Soldiers wrapped themselves in whatever they could find, but it wasn't enough. But the Soviet forces were ready, equipped for winter, trained for these conditions, reinforced by fresh troops from Siberia. And when they launched their counterattack, it was devastating. The Germans, already weakened, could not respond effectively. For the first time in the war, they were being pushed back. What followed was chaos. Units began to retreat. Lines collapsed. Communication broke down, but Hitler refused to allow withdrawal. His orders were absolute: no retreat. Hold the line at all costs. And that cost was enormous. Thousands of soldiers were left exposed, surrounded, frozen, abandoned by a strategy that no longer made sense. What had once been a confident advance had turned into a desperate fight for survival. And in that moment, the war had changed forever. Germany would never fully recover from this failure. The invasion of the Soviet Union had become a war of attrition, one that Germany was not prepared to win. The initiative was lost. And from that point forward, the outcome of the war began to shift. It wasn't just the winter. It wasn't just the Soviet resistance. It was a mistake. A failure to understand the scale of the enemy, the importance of time, and the limits of their own strategy. And in war, one mistake is often all it takes. Because in the end, the most powerful armies are not destroyed only by their enemies, but by the decisions they make. And this decision changed the course of history forever. E no fim, não foi apenas o frio ou o inimigo que os destruiu. Foi uma decisão, momento de excesso de confiança, a crença de que a vitória estava garantida, quando, na realidade, tudo já estava escapando por entre os dedos. Porque, na guerra, os maiores erros são muitas vezes invisíveis, até que seja tarde demais. A história não se lembra apenas das vitórias, ela se lembra das derrotas, daquelas que mudam o mundo para sempre. E esta foi uma delas, ponto. Então agora eu quero te perguntar, você acha que a Alemanha poderia ter vencido se esse erro nunca tivesse acontecido, ou a derrota era inevitável desde o início? Deixe sua opinião nos comentários. Eu leio todos, e se você gosta de histórias como esta, reais, intensas e inesquecíveis. Não se esqueça de se inscrever. Porque aqui, nós não apenas contamos a história, nós a trazemos à vida.